Good evening and welcome to this evening's webinar. My name is Russell Davis. For those who don't know me or haven't heard one of my talks, I shall be giving a little introduction to myself in a minute. But just before we kind of get going into it, I just want to check on some housekeeping. And the first thing is to make sure everyone can actually hear me. I wanted to make sure you also know how to ask questions to make this as interactive as possible. Thank you for those who have sent in questions already. That's absolutely fabulous, and I should be incorporating as many of those as I can, and you're free to ask questions as we go along this evening as well. Now, on the right hand side of your screen, you should see a number of tabs, and one says chat, and you should find a chat box, hopefully. And if you do find the chat box, if you could just type hi or something in there, just so I know people can hear the technology is working. Otherwise, I should be wittering on into a black hole. I just want to make sure that, yeah, people can actually hear and the technology is working. Because that's also how you ask a question using that chat box. And I'll come on to that in a minute. But if you can just put, once you found the chat box, just put in hi or something. That would be absolutely fabulous. Then I can make sure, yeah, people can actually hear before I start. Brilliant, they're coming in. Excellent. And there's people still joining the room, so excellent. Hello, everyone there. So yeah, that's the chat box to ask a question. And I'd ask you whether to please restrict the use of the chat box to questions, questions for me, rather than chat to each other, because mainly because, well, two reasons. One is if there's other chats going on that chat box, in the chat box, I may miss a question, and it's kind of unfair for someone if I kind of maybe missed their question. But also, I want you to listen to me rather than chat to each other. I want you to listen in a particular way, because so many times we listen to talks or read books, we take in information in a particular way, and we're almost trained to take in information through intellectual understanding, to reinforce what we think we know or to find out what we don't know. Now, you may hear some things you've heard tonight you've heard already from myself or somewhere else. There may be new things, who knows? But if we listen in a different way, whether we heard something before or not doesn't matter. We can hear it in a new, fresh way. We can hear what we need to hear this evening. And that's about listening with feeling. So I just want to open your minds just to listen with feeling. Have an experience as you listen tonight. And if you feel inspired to ask a question, just type in a question in that chat box. And you can mark your questions or your questions private or public. So if you want just no one else to see it, you can mark it as private. Only I get to see that, or it can be public. It's purely up to you. So I do, yeah, encourage you, or maybe request that you do restrict the chat box to questions only, or if maybe the sound goes and you think there's something wrong technically and you can't hear, please feel free to put in the chat box. Maybe you can't hear. So I guess using the chat box for messages to me, that'd be really helpful, because then I can make sure I can see them and act on them. And sometimes when there's chit chat amongst participants, those questions and messages to me kind of get lost. And I want everyone to have an opportunity to ask a question where possible. So thank you for that. For those who haven't found the chat box, they should have a little sidebar to the right hand side of your screen, and there'll be a chat tab, and down the bottom they've got a message, a box to type in, and then a little kind of button that says post. So that's the housekeeping out of the way. So yeah, please do feel free to ask questions at any point, and I will pause every now and then to take them and answer them. And as I say, we had a bunch in already via email, which is great, and I'll be incorporating those. So I hope you enjoy this evening, and yeah, just listen with feeling and have a lovely experience as we go through this evening. The title of this evening's talk is kind of Mind Your Fertility, and the kind of subtitle is How to Utilize Your Mind to Increase Your Chances of Success. A very, very big and broad subject to try and cover in a short time, in an hour. There's stuff we're going to look at this evening. We could do a whole webinar on, or maybe we'll do in the future if there's enough interest. But I'm hoping there'll be enough in this evening for you to listen and maybe find something in you for you. And another thing I mentioned about listening, I encourage you not to take notes. It can be very tempting to take notes to make sure you get the most out of a talk. I'll tell you a little story. The first time I came across this kind of way of listening and engaging, I was in a 2-day workshop, and I was there, the front row, my pad and my pen, and I wanted to get the most out of it. And the workshop leader encouraged us to put our pads and pens down and have an experience over the next 2 days. And my heart started racing, and I felt naked not having a pad and pen on my knee. And I was like, what if I missed the most important thing? I spent a lot of money for this workshop, and what if I miss the most important thing and don't get maximum value from it? And what was interesting, and the guys leading it saying, well, how many times do you go to things like workshops or trainings or listen to talks? We make loads of notes, and you could go away with 500 written notes, but how many actually make a difference to your life? It's better to go away one insight, one aha moment that makes a difference, than loads of written notes that make no difference. And often when we write notes, again, we're engaging intellectually and not listening for feeling, and just listening for an experience. And that opens your heart up to aha moments, changes of heart about your journey, your experience, which can lead to changes in your life. So I just encourage you to listen for a feeling and be open to those insights and aha moments rather than making notes. So that's another thing about kind of making notes. This evening has been brought to you by Infertility Network UK. For those who aren't aware of Infertility Network UK, and we weren't on our journey, and it's something I really wish we were, IN UK are a patient charity here in the UK that provides support and information for people who are struggling to conceive. And we've won about 1 in 6 couples facing some kind of fertility issue. There's obviously a wide audience of people who could benefit from their help. IN UK offer a variety of patient services, all for free, whether you want information from their website or even someone to talk to. They have a network of over 200 trained helpline volunteers and regional staff who organise support groups and all sorts of ways of accessing their help. And they really believe that no one should face the heartache of struggling to conceive alone, and they want to be with you on your journey. And this is why I'm a big fan of IN UK. I wish we were aware of them on our journey. So I like to support them as much as I can, and doing these webinars is a way I like to give to them, but also to give to you, back to the community that I've very much been part of and like to consider myself still part of. This year, IN UK are launching a second National Fertility Awareness Week in October, November, 27th of October to 2nd November, and you can find more details on their website. And that's another thing I like about IN UK. They're raising the profile of infertility. As often it's a hidden or unspoken thing, and so many people go through it alone because they don't feel that people can understand or they can talk to their friends and family. So I like that one of the things they do is raising the profile, so more people are aware what it's like and aware that how widespread kind of infertility can be. So that's IN UK. A little bit about myself. This is me. I always like to show a picture of me because when you're hearing your voice, it's nice maybe to see the face behind the voice. So my name is Russell Davis. As I've kind of hinted, my wife and I had 10 years infertility experience. My wife was diagnosed with PCOS as a teenager, and we always believed we thought we couldn't have children. And then she went on a journey to heal herself more naturally, not with ever the expectation of being able to have children, have her fertility back, but she was fed up of just taking medication the whole time, wanted to find a more natural way of managing things. And we found a fabulous gynecologist and went on a journey of healing and got her full cycle back after 8 years of her journey. Then for the first time as well, we thought maybe we could have children. and it was a kind of, as you know, fertility can be a bit of a roller coaster. And after a year or so, so at that point, 9.5 years into our journey or so, we found out I was infertile, which was, yeah, a real kick in the teeth. Never expected that, never saw that coming. And we can look back and see how much our minds and our lifestyle and our emotions, our beliefs, all that kind of stuff played a role in our journey. And we really do believe if we knew some of these things now, our journey would never have been that long. And we went on to conceive naturally just before starting ICSI, and we were told there's a 1 in a million chance of it ever happening naturally. And we can see so much that we learned and grew through our journey, and we want to share our experience with others. I've gone on and trained, and now I'm a cognitive hypnotherapist and a coach specializing in fertility, and I support women and couples all over the world on their journey to find what I call a place of peace without giving up, a place of peace so they can continue their journey and with a much better kind of emotional experience, and utilizing that mind-body, which I'll come on to a bit later, and really harnessing that mind-body link, which can actually increase their chances of success. And there's plenty of research that I'll come on to that shows how utilizing mind-body programs can double success rates. And I created the Fertile Mind fertility coaching and hypnosis programs to help women and couples do that. A little bit more about me. I'm a big fan of running, called barefoot running. I either wear these weird shoes or no shoes. I'm a big Apple Mac fan, and I'm just fascinated about everything to do with the mind. So that's a little bit about me. So we're looking forward to sharing what I've got to share tonight with you. Now, the first area, I've got 3 areas to cover this evening, and again, it's just those who maybe just joined, feel free to type questions at any point during the talk using the chat box. Keep chat, please, just to questions or comments to me. If you've got a problem with the sound, you think my sound's gone or something, just type it in the chat box so I can pick up those messages. And I will answer the questions at some point as we go along, and I will be covering the questions that have been emailed to me already. So I've got 3 sections for this evening. The first one is stress and fertility. I wanted to kind of a little bit about how stress actually can impact your fertility. And I'm going to cover specifically one study that says actually stress doesn't impact fertility, but I just want to look at the whole area of stress and fertility and how does stress impact your chances to conceive, whether conceiving naturally or your chances of success through fertility treatment. Now, many of you are probably very familiar with this kind of diagram. You might have seen it before, that shows the different fertility hormones and the levels of those hormones as you go through the cycle, both the typical menstrual cycle, but also how they change when you become pregnant. Now, a lot of these hormones, or the levels of these hormones, are controlled by your brain. It's the LH, FSH, all these hormones are produced by 2 parts of the brain. The hypothalamus in the brain controls the release of a hormone or drug called GnRH, which controls the levels of hormone release from the pituitary gland in the brain. The pituitary gland controls the release of a number of hormones, including LH and FSH. But the pituitary gland also controls the levels of your stress hormones. And there's studies have shown that when there's stress in the body, when you're stressed, the levels of GnRH, the way the hypothalamus pulses at different rates to the pituitary gland, impacts the levels of LH and FSH. You have more stress hormones flying around, and the pituitary gland is focused on reducing stress hormones, and that can impact the levels of your fertility hormones. And the feedback mechanism to the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus through progesterone and estrogen, it just impacts that whole balance. And you can imagine for fertility, the whole reproductive system, you need a very delicate balance of a cocktail of hormones at different stages of process. At different stages of your cycle, you need a different balance, a different mix, a different cocktail. And that changes as you go through the cycle and you go through the process. So it's a very kind of finely balanced level of hormones required, which can quite easily be knocked out through stress and other things. So this gives you a flavour of how stress can actually impact the levels of your fertility hormones, LH, FSH, including progesterone and estrogen, because it's controlled by the pituitary gland and hypothalamus in the brain that also control the levels and the release of the stress hormones. And there are plenty of studies that show how stress does impact fertility. I don't expect you to be able to read that slide. That's just a list of some of the studies that can demonstrate how stress impacts fertility. The vast majority of studies in this area show a link between stress and success rates. The University of California did a study and they showed that the IVF success rate was 93% lower for the most stressed women compared to the least stressed. Boston IVF and Harvard University have done a number of studies in this area, and one study showed that the success rates of those women going through IVF was 52% compared to 20% for those women that went through a mind-body program that supported their treatment. So it was over double the success rate for those women who did some kind of mind-body program that supported their medical treatment. And then there's a study in Egypt that used hypnosis through embryo transfer, and it doubled the success rate for the women going through that treatment. And that particular study, I kind of see this maybe some slight flaws in it, but the fact that the success rate was double shows there's got to be something in this. So the overwhelming majority of studies in this area indicate there is a link between stress and fertility. There is one study by Cardiff University that says that there isn't a link. Now that study is a study of studies. It's not a study of real people. It's a kind of a mathematical analysis of other studies. And they say that, well, stress doesn't impact your fertility because they say that the maths demonstrates that through their study. But also they say, well, look at war-torn countries and places like that. There's no significant impact in fertility rates. Well, there's two things I'd like to say about that. The one is that Harvard University have done a critique of that study, and it was published in Fertility and Sterility magazine. And they showed that the measurement that study used for stress was not consistent across the various studies. So there was inconsistencies on what measure they used for stress. But also there's also inconsistencies on what they used as the outcome success. Some studies used a live birth, some used kind of a positive pregnancy test. And the third thing that they reckon the measure for stress they used for that study was not appropriate. It was a one-time measure of stress in that one moment, and sometimes it was up to 3 months ahead of treatment. So Harvard University thinks there's many flaws in that study that goes against all the other studies. So I personally think there's enough overwhelming evidence through studies, but also through my personal experience and through my clinical experience, that demonstrates a quite significant link between stress and fertility. So that's how to give you a flavour about how stress can actually biologically impact fertility. So please, just to reiterate, just type in the questions as we go along. So moving on, what do we mean by stress? What is stress? A lot of people say, well, how can I let go of the stress on my journey? And studies have shown how the stress levels with women going through fertility can be equivalent to those with AIDS, cancer and heart disease. It can be quite a significant stressful experience. So to help us kind of understand and let go of this stress, I would say, well, what is stress? Now, I'll take a step back and just see what makes up our kind of human experience, what makes up our feelings and our behaviors, what makes us moment to moment. And often we do feel an emotion like stress, and it's our feelings that drive our behaviors. When we're feeling stressed, that can lead to maybe some unhelpful behaviors, whether it's impacting our nutrition and our diet, or whether we become obsessive about trying to get the latest or the deep bit of information that's going to make a difference for us. But our emotions drive our behaviors. And sometimes we're not happy about our behaviors, the way we behave, the way we speak to people when we're stressed. And that leads to an evaluation. Maybe our behavior is eating unhealthily and we feel sad about that. We feel annoyed with ourselves. And often that evaluation leads to even stronger emotion or feeds the emotion. And we can get trapped in this cycle of a feeling, a behavior, an evaluation about our behavior, about how we are, that either feeds the original feeling or creates another not nice, not pleasant emotion that can often come out in another unhelpful behavior. And sometimes we can get trapped in that cycle, really desperate of trying to find a way of breaking it, a desperate way of trying to change our behaviors or change how we feel. And a lot of forms of therapy and counseling focus on behaviors, change how your behavior, just stop doing this and you'll feel different. That's really, really difficult when there's a strong emotion behind it, when your emotions are driving your behavior. So some forms of therapy and counseling focus on your emotions. Tell me how you feel about that. Tell me about your mother. It's kind of, it's moving further upstream, which is getting closer. But for me, when we go further upstream, evaluation is a type of thought. What's missing in this cycle is our thinking. It's our thinking that creates our feelings. And evaluation is a type of thought. So it's our thinking that creates our feelings, which drives our behavior. So when we feel stressed, it's what's going on in our head, it's our thinking that creates that feeling of stress. It's not the circumstances around you. Nothing has the power to make you feel anything. Some people say they're in a very stressful job, but the job doesn't have the power to make you feel stressed. Seeing someone pregnant doesn't have the power to make you feel anything. It's what you're thinking about those circumstances creates your experience. And what frees us from that is when we begin to really truly understand the nature of a thought. A dog chases its tail because it doesn't understand the nature of a tail. As soon as a dog realizes and understands the tail is part of the dog, it stops chasing it. And as soon as we recognize the nature of a thought, we can stop chasing it. We can stop getting caught up in it. And unfortunately, through kind of parenting and schooling, I think a lot of schooling system is at fault at this, and society trains us to think. And we lose a sense of self. We lose a sense of our true identity. That's why so many people come out the education system not really knowing who they are or what they want to do. You're either guided by your thinking or you're guided by your intuition, your instinct. And some people say, well, I can't be guided by my instinct. I'll make whimsical decisions. I need my thinking to be wise, to be safe, and to be happy. But I call your instincts, your intuition, I call it your wisdom. Because your instinct includes your life experience, your knowledge, your intellect. If you imagine two firefighters going to a burning building, one's been on the job for 10 years, one is his first day on the job. A burning building is not a place you've got time to think. You've got to act on instinct. Who is more likely to come out alive? I would say it's the guy with 10 years experience, because your instincts, your intuition includes your life experience, your knowledge, your intellect. It includes all that. It's your wisdom. So we get caught up into believing our thinking. We think we need to follow our thinking. And we think the feeling we get we need to do something about. But thoughts come and go like clouds on the breeze if we let them. Thoughts are not reality. And the feeling that comes with it is not real. It's based on a story we're telling ourselves in our head. We're only ever feeling our thinking. And stress is mainly future thinking. You can't be stressed if you're purely in the here and now. Stress is worrying about stuff that hasn't happened yet. Either trying to control it so you can have some faith that what's going to happen, or you feel okay because you feel in control of it, or you're second guessing what might happen and trying to manipulate and control outcomes. But nothing can predict the future, not even your thinking. Stress is all future thinking. It's not about being present to the moment. And when you begin to realize and understand this nature of thought and what stress is, and you come back to the here and now, let go of all the thinking in your head, come back to the present moment. That's when you let go of the stress, and you can be present to where you are. And when you come back to being present to where you are, you feel peace of mind, because we're born with peace of mind. It's who we are. It's part of who we are. But our thinking tells us our well-being, our peace of mind, our sense of being okay is dependent on external things, what people think of us, or circumstances. Our thinking goes looking in the wrong place for peace of mind. People go to India looking for inner peace. They're looking in the wrong place. It's inside us. And thinking is looking in the wrong place. So it's about understanding, I guess, the psychology of the mind and what makes up our human experience, frees us from this noise in our head and the subsequent feelings we get. We live in the experience of our thinking. And just to help demonstrate this, or just to take the conversation further, I'm going to go through some of the questions that have come in. One is how to stop stressful feelings and thoughts, particularly as time marches on. I think the question itself indicates the problem is time marches on. The thinking is worrying about the future. Thinking saying, I haven't got to get less and less time. It's less likely to happen. It's all future thinking. As I say, it's about being back into the present moment. Another question is, I do everything I'm told to do, but I'm still not pregnant. Now, thinking makes things black and white. Thinking says it's good things or bad things to do, right thing or wrong thing to do. Thinking is very black and white. Even Shakespeare said, there is no right nor wrong, but thinking makes it so. And we let go of our thinking, become more comfortable with the greyness of life. But also, when we let go of our thinking, we come back to the present moment. We tune more into our body, because our body is always in the present moment. And our intuition, our instinct, is the best guidance mechanism we can have to life. And your instinct, your intuition knows what you need any moment in time. So it's about recognizing what the right thing for you is in that moment in time. Listening to your intuition. Just because people say do this and do that doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. You need to filter that through your instinct, your intuition. What does your body say? And it's not what we do, it's why we do things. I'm a big fan of taking daily temperatures, because so many women are not really aware of their cycle. But the moment it becomes a chore, you stop doing it, because you're no longer getting benefit. It's becoming a hindrance. But some people keep doing it because they should be doing it. Well, the word should is just a thought, it's a judgment. It's about letting go of these external judgments and thinking, and trusting your instinct, trusting your intuition, which includes your knowledge, your intellect. It's about taking the advice and filtering it through your instinct. There's no formula to getting pregnant, unfortunately. I wish there was. It's an art as well as a science. And it's about just being aware of where you're at, what you need, listening to your body. Your body knows what's best for your situation. Another question has come in. I'd say my biggest issue is struggling with infertility is truly believing I can do it. There are times I feel optimistic about the future, and even times when I think for sure I must get pregnant at some point. But I don't think I'm yet truly convinced I'm able to get pregnant, nor have I believed I certainly will get pregnant. I wonder if it's been creating a mental block for me and may not be making it any easier to conceive. And I believe it may well be creating some mental blocks that are holding you back. And two things come to mind. One is that there's a phrase, what the thinker thinks, the prover proves. If you think something, you go looking for all the evidence to back it up. And it reinforces that belief, reinforces that thought pattern. So if you think you can't get pregnant, you'll look for the evidence that reinforces it, and you're taking yourself down this negative thought pattern. The other thing is, it's not about what you're thinking that's the problem. It's not letting go of negative thinking and replacing it with positive thinking. And people often ask me about positive affirmations, about whether they work. Well, technically they can work. Affirmations very much can work, because by sure negative affirmations work. Most of my clients have negative affirmations going around their head. They sure work. But the thing is, when you try and fight thought with thought, it's a very hard battle to win. Very, very hard battle to win, because your thinking is too clever. If you've got a negative thought comes to mind, you're saying, and you engage with it, and you tell it why it's wrong, it'll come back with all the reasons why it's right. Or the thinker thinks, the prover proves. So it's not what you're thinking that's the problem. It's the fact you're thinking. You're either tuned into your thinking, or you're tuned into something deeper within your soul, your instinct, your intuition. It's about trusting that deeper voice within. It's not replacing negative thinking with positive thinking. It's trusting your instinct, your intuition as a guidance mechanism to life, which is grounded in the here and now. Thinking is about past stuff and future stuff. It's not in the here and now. So that's my response to that. If you've got any follow-up questions, or I think just put them in the chat box. I'm very happy to take follow-up questions. Now, one of the questions come in is they find it very hard to be happy for friends who are pregnant. And this is a very common thing about what to do when work colleagues or friends tell you they're pregnant. How can you be happy for them? Well, again, it's not the circumstances creating your response. It's what you think about it. And if someone tells you they're pregnant, and subconsciously, and often we're not aware of our thinking, I must say that sometimes it's hidden thinking or subconscious thinking, but we experience it through our feelings. And our feelings are like a barometer to the quality of our thinking. So if we've got low level thinking, we'll be aware of that through our feelings. And we can trust that feeling is like telling us we're caught in some story in our head. So when you see someone pregnant, someone says they're pregnant, it's what you tell yourself in that moment creates that experience. So if you're telling yourself, oh, it's never going to happen for me, why is it happening for them? They haven't even tried, it's so easy for them, all these stories, that's going to create an unhelpful experience for you. But being truly in the moment helps you remain calm and peaceful. You don't know what your journey is. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, next month, next week. It's about being grounded in the here and now, letting go of those stories, trusting that feeling that may come up. It's just a story. You can let it go. And yes, it may be difficult in that moment, but you can trust that will pass. That will pass. We're all on our own path. We can't predict our own future. We can truly believe that whatever happens would be okay. And if you didn't hear the previous webinar, I encourage you to listen to that, because I go through that in a lot more detail. And if you're not sure where to get that, it's on the IN UK's website, or you can just email me and I'll send you a copy. Another question is when to give up. What steps to take to be pregnant? Knowing what the best right thing to do is, I think I've touched on that. There is no right thing, there is no best thing. It's your instinct that lets you know what's right for you. It's your instinct knows whether maybe to have a fertility holiday. And sometimes when I work with clients, they get more in tune with their instinct, their intuition. Part of them saying, you know what, I just need to take a break for a couple of months. Stop trying. And guess what? That's when miracles can happen. And it's not about just giving up because you want it to happen. It's about recognizing what your body is saying, what your intuition is saying. That it's okay to stop. But actually sometimes when you take a fertility holiday, you regain time. You lower your fertility age because you're letting go of some of the stress and the desperation and everything else that can go alongside the journey. So what steps to take, when to give up? There's no right or wrong. Only you know that. Your intuition knows that. When you let go of the stories and the thinking, your body and your intuition can let you know. One more question before we actually move on to the next thing is, I have a sense of panic and overwhelming excitement when I think I might be pregnant. I want to be pregnant more than anything, but I'm also very scared to have another loss. I'm concerned of getting in my own way with this panic. So he's scared of having another loss. See, there's past thinking and future thinking. Going back into the past and having a loss, miscarriages, and it's very negative tests are very difficult experiences. And our mind goes back to those, then projects into the future, saying, I don't want that to happen again. So I encourage you, if you have had some traumatic experiences in the past or emotional experiences from the past, maybe from miscarriage, maybe to seek some help in letting go of that, because it may be holding you back from moving forward. Subconsciously, your mind may be saying, I'm not going through that again. And interestingly, a high percentage of secondary infertility cases are related to trauma associated with a previous birth or miscarriage. So it's about letting go of stuff from the past thinking. And if you find you're trapped in past thinking through grief and things like that, then maybe you can seek some help to let go of those. And it's not projecting into the future, about being in the moment. The panic, the overwhelm, the panic is fear, and panic is future thinking. Panic, you may lose a pregnancy if you have a positive test. Again, that's future thinking. You may lose it. Well, you're here in the moment. Just be today. Be where you are today. Tomorrow can take care of itself. Just be where you are today. That's all you can do. It's the only moment that exists in space and time is the present moment. Okay. Any other questions on stress and thinking and that's, please just to type them in the question box. I'm going to take a little pause to see if any come in before I move on to how we actually harness this mind-body system, this mind-body link. Letting go of stress and all those stories can help us find more of a sense of peace on our journey. Subconsciously, our body is letting go of that stress and we're relaxing into the moment. That can make a significant difference to your fertility and outcome. And what I want to move on to next is how we can then harness that mind-body link to positively direct healing and change to your body, even physical, biological change. So, no other questions have come in yet, just type them if they do. So the mind-body system. How can we harness this mind-body system? And I tend to call it mind-body system or the mind-body link, because actually the mind and body are one system. They're not linked, they are one system. It's like when you wake up from a nightmare. You have physical responses to the nightmare as if it was real. Maybe your heart's beating or you're sweating. That just exists purely in your mind, but your body is responding as if it's real. Because actually your mind can't tell the difference between reality and imagination, which I'll come on to. So the mind and body are one system, and we've all heard of the placebo effect, where you take a sugar pill, and when you don't realize it's a sugar pill and you think it's medication, it can actually give you the effect as if you're taking medication. And the pharmaceutical industry is very aware of the placebo effect. They test for it when they test for new drugs. And about 35% is often quoted as the effectiveness of placebos, but it can be low as 10%, but it can also be as high as 100% in some drug trials. And interestingly, it seems to be on the increase because between 2002 and 2006, the number of drugs that were axed after what they call phase 2 clinical trials, which are the volunteer trials, the number of drugs that were axed after volunteer trials increased by 20% because the drugs couldn't beat the placebos they were compared against. And in 2008, a new drug for Parkinson's disease and a new drug for schizophrenia and Crohn's disease were all axed or stopped because they failed against the placebo. The placebo is much higher than expected, so they withdrew those kind of drugs. I'll tell you a story about a patient. This is going back to 1957. It was not my patient because I wasn't alive then, but it's a cancer patient. And it's a true story about And it demonstrates that the power of the placebo effect on the mind-body system. In 1957, this patient, Mr. Wright, had terminal cancer. He was given a life expectancy of about 2 weeks by his doctor. His only medication was oxygen to breathe and a sedative to help him on his way. However, Mr. Wright, the patient, had enormous faith in a new miracle drug called gribozin that was being tested in the clinic he was in. The thing is, he didn't qualify for the test program because his condition was too serious. He begged so hard, his doctor gave him a single injection of this new drug that was being tested. His doctor then noted that his tumour masses had melted like snowballs on a hot stove. In 3 days, they were half their original size, and he was walking around the ward chatting happily. He'd moved from being sedated and on oxygen to walking around the ward chatting happily in 3 days after having this new drug. Mr. Wright was symptom-free for 2 months, until he read in the newspaper this new drug was worthless at treating cancer. He began to lose faith in this new drug. He began to lose faith in his last hope, and he relapsed to his original state and was readmitted to hospital. With nothing to lose, his doctor assured him the first batch deteriorated rapidly in the bottles, and there's a new, improved, double-strength batch was on its way and was arriving the next day. The next day, what Mr. Wright actually received was an injection of salt water. But once again, he was symptom-free for 2 months. Then the headlines again proclaimed the national test of the drug had proved so worthless it was being canned. With his faith gone, Mr. Wright relapsed and died 2 days later. It's quite an extreme case, but it really demonstrates the power of the mind. Where he was symptom-free after 2 months of having an injection of salt water. There's a Harvard professor, Ellen Langer. She's been studying the mind-body link for over 30 years. And one of her famous studies it's called Counterclockwise, where she took a bunch of guys in their 80s and put them in an environment of 30 years ago. So they lived in his house with decor from about 30 years previously. This was in the early 80s, so it was 1950s environment and decor and news and books and newspapers. And these bunch of guys started to talk about the 50s and reminisce. And they're in this environment for 2 weeks. They had a bunch of physical and psychometric tests before they went in, and they were repeated when they came out. Even Ellen Langer herself was astounded at the changes. Some of them hobbled in on frames and sticks and came out playing touch rugby. Such was the dramatic physical differences in these guys for just reminiscing and living in an environment from 30 years previous. Then Harvard did there's another study by Harvard using piano sequence, where volunteers were taught a piano sequence. These weren't pianists, they were just taught to play a little simple tune on the piano. Some were taught it and told to go and physically practice it every day for 2 weeks. Other people were just told to visualize, imagine practicing it. To go nowhere near a piano, just imagine practicing it. And the brain scans between the two different groups, the top group is those who physically practiced, the lower one is the mental practice. As you can see, the brain scans are almost identical. The changes in the brain were almost identical whether they did a physical practice or mental practice. And when they came down to actually practice and play the piece, play the little tune, yeah, those that did the physical practice had less mistakes. But what was interesting, after 2 hours of physical practice, the people that did the mental practice were the same level. So very quickly they caught up, because the brain had learnt the pattern. Almost the muscles had learnt what it needed to learn. So the brain can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. Another study I love is the Lerner Institute in America, the little finger exercise, where there are a good group of people to visualize doing little finger exercises. And they measured the strength of the little finger before and afterwards. After a couple of weeks of doing little finger exercises, they measured a 35% improvement in muscle strength without lifting a finger. And that increased to 40% after the study. Just by visualizing doing exercises, they had muscle strength improvement. You don't need to go to the gym, just visualize going to the gym. Not quite true, you won't get the same level of effect, but you will get an effect actually. You will get an effect. I share these, and there's countless others demonstrating how our mind can affect our biology down to DNA level. If you're interested in it, a couple of books I recommend is Dr. Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief, a microbiologist that can demonstrate down to cellular level and DNA level how our thoughts and our environment can affect our biology. Dr. David Hamilton, Scottish, he was a scientist working for drugs companies, now just studies and shares and teaches about the mind-body link and the placebo effect. Both have got some great books out. If you want to explore this power of this mind-body system, which is incredible. I use it myself. If I become sick, if I start to feel unwell, I visualize my body healing. If I have a sporting injury, if I pull a muscle, I visualize it healing. And I repair and heal far quicker than people expect. Quite a few years ago, one Christmas, our whole family and the family we were staying with came down with the norovirus, a very kind of powerful sickness bug. Typically, people had it, felt unwell, almost 3 or 4 days before they kind of felt back on their feet. As soon as I start to see what's going down, I started to use visualizations. As soon as I started to feel unwell, I was using visualizations. I was never actually sick, but I felt unwell for 24 hours and I was back on my feet. And I truly believe that's because of the visualization and the power of the mind-body system. And how can you harness this? Well, just visualizing what your body wants it to do. It doesn't have to be biological. It could be any way you visualize it at all. It could be crazy stuff. Like for me, if I feel I got a virus or feeling unwell, I might visualize a Pac-Man going through my system, eating up all the virus. I was a big Star Wars fan as a kid. I might visualize spaceships shooting out the virus. If I pull a muscle, I might visualize little workmen physically repairing the muscle. I don't necessarily use biological visualizations. It doesn't have to be. It's anything. Your imagination is a gateway to your unconscious mind. And just using those metaphors that come to mind for you can create a very powerful access to your unconscious mind, because your unconscious mind controls all your bodily functions, and you can direct it and guide it to what you want. So as you imagine your hormones balancing, or an egg implanting, or conception, wherever you visualize, just visualizing your body doing what it needs to do for you in that moment in time. And some people say, well, I can't visualize. Well, everyone can actually visualize. You may not get a really vivid, powerful photographic image in your mind. You may get a sense of it. That's enough. Because often it's the feeling you get as you do it is more powerful. In fact, Dr. David Hamilton refers to the term feelingsization. I quite like that. So you can harness this mind-body link by using the power of your imagination. A couple of questions have come in that touch on this. I have very painful periods, and although I have PCOS and mild endometriosis, I wonder if the pain is due to some anger I have with the unfairness of it all. Well, given the mind and body and one system, absolutely, it could well be. Your anger tenses your body, which can obviously make your periods more painful. And of course, endometriosis can result in painful periods as well. But also, you can visualize, even endometriosis and PCOS, you can visualize your body healing, visualize your body repairing. I've had clients who don't ovulate who start ovulating. Clients have gone through IVF and harvest a very small number of healthy eggs. We start working together. Next time they harvest a much higher number of quality eggs. Is that coincidence? Who knows? Who cares? And on that, a question came in: what imagery can I use to make my egg reserve as healthy as possible? I'd say whatever comes to mind for you, whatever imagination comes to mind for you. One client I had imagined the eggs, the two different colors eggs, blue eggs for healthy eggs, red eggs for unhealthy eggs. She should visualize more blue dots among the red dots. There's no right or wrong. It's whatever works for you. Just play with your imagination. This so hopefully demonstrate some of that power of the mind-body link. And one question has come in is, how can one improve their chances of fertility? Well, I think it's all this, by letting go of our negative stories and our thinking, about being more back into the present moment, can help us not only change our experience of the journey, when you come back to the present moment and let go of all that stress, you undoubtedly increase your chances of success. But also then harnessing this mind-body system, guiding your body to do what you want it to do, can absolutely improve your chances of success. So just to wrap up, there's a couple of last questions, and please do feel free to type any questions you've got in these last few minutes as we close. I have a 14-month-old son who was born following a second IVF attempt after 7 years of unexplained fertility, during which I tried almost everything from acupuncture, yoga, diet changes, various supplements, but nothing worked. The first IVF attempt failed, but before the second one, I started listening to hypnotherapy CDs for infertility and IVF and fell pregnant. I'm now 41 and would love my baby boy to have a brother or sister, and we're trying for a baby now again. But in the back of my mind, I do wonder whether it would happen naturally, as it didn't happen naturally before for such a long time. If you have any tips on how to approach this issue more positively, that would be awesome. I think hopefully just by listening, hearing what I've said tonight, hopefully it'll give you some ideas about letting go of expectations and future thinking. And the thing is about unexplained infertility is it can be quite frustrating, because sometimes you want to know, you want to know an answer, you want to know why things aren't happening. I say, unfortunately, fertility is an art as well as a science. And I can't say whether it happened or not. Naturally, it took IVF last time. I don't know whether you'll fall pregnant naturally or not, but I can say the best chances of allowing your body to do that is to be more in the moment, is to let go of the stories or what it may mean to have another. The stories of telling yourself, "Oh, it'd be better for my son to have a sibling." There's no right or wrong. Whatever happens, you'll be okay. He'll be okay. So my tip would be just be more being in the moment, letting go of future expectations, future thinking, and maybe try some CDs for natural fertility. You seem to enjoy them, got some benefit from them for the IVF. You can get them from whether my website or elsewhere, some CDs that help you visualize and use hypnotherapy for natural conception. But actually, if you want to have a more detailed conversation, I'm very happy to do that. Get in contact. I'm happy to explore that in more detail with you and your circumstances in more detail. Another question that's come in is, how do you visualize? When, where, how, for how long? Great question. This again, you're going to hate me saying there's no right or wrong, but maybe some guidelines I can give you is when I use visualizations quite a lot in my fertility CDs, they don't need to be long, but they're using kind of powerful hypnosis suggestions as well to embed those. But if you just want to sit down and visualize, like I do if I'm got an illness or an injury, I might sit down and visualize just for a couple of minutes, 1 minute or 2 minutes. Just for 1 or 2 minutes, just close my eyes and visualize my body doing what it wanted to do. I might do that, say, twice a day. But it might also pop into mind other times. Without me thinking about it, just pop in. I might, by washing up, just spend a few seconds just reinforcing it if it comes to mind. But I might purposely sit down for 1 or 2 minutes, maybe twice a day, just to go through that visualization. Whether you've got a process unfolding like a movie in your mind, whether it's a process you're repeating over and over, doesn't matter. Whatever works for you. So that's how I visualize. Just close my eyes and imagine healing, whatever I want to be happening in my body. Sometimes I do actually record hypnosis CDs for myself. I'm a hypnotherapist, and I record the visualization embedded in powerful hypnotic suggestions, and that can make it more potent and more powerful, because you can go kind of deeper into that imagination and deeper into your unconscious mind. So I think Any hypnosis CDs that you use visualizations can be really useful, but you can just sit down and just do it yourself. Sit down and imagine your body doing what you want to do in whichever way you see that, and whichever way works for you. Hopefully that's answered that question. Any other questions before we close? And feel free, anyone who's listening or listening to the recording, feel free to get in contact direct if you've got a follow-up questions or want to take this further. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm on a mission to change the face of fertility support because I get quite frustrated how often the lack of emotional support for people on their journey. So feel free to get in contact if you think I can help, or you've got any other questions you want me to cover. Just going to pause for a moment just to see if any other questions come in on the chat box. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, and if you're still typing, I should try and come back to it. If not, please do feel get into contact with email. But otherwise, I'd say thank you for listening. And if you want information, you can contact me via my website, thefertilemind.net, or you can look at Infertility Network UK for wealth of information on their website. If you found this webinar helpful, Infertility Network UK have no guaranteed income. So if you found it was helpful and like to say thank you in some way, please consider maybe sending a text to maybe 22. So text maybe 22 to 770. So it's with a figure. So it's text maybe 22 to 770, followed by a figure you'd like to donate, whether it's £5, £10, even just £2. It'd be great if you found this helpful. I'd like to show your appreciation in some way. Because Infertility Network UK have no guaranteed income. I'm not getting paid for this. It's all volunteers helping people get a better level of support on their journey. There's a very small number of paid staff in the charity. A lot of it is volunteers giving their time. So please feel free to show your gratitude if you so wish by texting. Maybe 22 followed by the amount to 770. And so feel free to get in contact with me directly via my website, and there's a wealth of information on Infertility Network UK. I hope you found it useful. This has been our it's our third webinar, but our second one recently, and if people find it useful, we may consider doing more, maybe turn it into a regular thing if people like that. If you think that'd be useful, get into contact, let us know, and maybe we can set these up as a monthly or regular thing. Our last few questions come in. I will just cover it in the last 2 minutes. How do you cope with the expectations of others that you will have children? We are getting married and everyone expects the babies will come next. Whenever someone asks me if we want children, it sets me back. I think I wrote an article on this recently about what to say when someone asks you whether you're going to have children or not. And the previous webinar I did touch on other people's helpful or unhelpful kind of support. And the problem is, it's almost if you haven't been through the journey, if you're not close to it, it's sometimes very difficult to truly understand what it's like. Those who work closely with people going through it can understand, but often friends and family just don't understand. And just recognizing they're just caught in their thinking. They're doing what they think best to support and help you or say the right things, but it's just their thinking. And it's just recognizing they're doing what they can. And we found it really helpful to have almost a script, a way of knowing what to say in these times and being honest. And so if someone asked us, are you planning to have children? We would say, actually, we're not sure we can. And it's quite interesting to see people's faces when you say that. But we found being honest was a real way of just stopping the conversation there. They felt too embarrassed to continue, and we could have continued if we wanted to. But being upfront and not being sharing any details, unless you really want to, and we never indicated who the problem allied with. We just said we're not sure we can, and we said we're okay that we're working through that. And we found that honesty was the best policy in a way. It takes the pressure off. It stops people keep asking, and it just sets the record straight. So that's, we personally found that helpful. You may want to consider that. So there's nothing wrong with being honest, and whatever happens, you'll get people saying these things, and it's their stuff, their journey, it's their thinking, it's not yours, and they're trying to demonstrate their love and care for you in whatever way they think is most helpful. Often it's not the most helpful way, but it's just their thinking, and maybe it sets you back because it's kicking off your thinking, and that's what often happens. One person's thinking can kick off your thinking, and when you feel upset or sad, that's okay. That's okay. It's just a thought passing through like a cloud on the breeze. It's just a feeling being attached to that story. It's not who you are. There's nothing to do to return to peace of mind. You can love yourself, show self-compassion in the midst of it. It's just a thought storm passing through. You automatically return to peace of mind without doing anything. That's our natural default setting. We work so hard to be okay, but actually, if we just stop trying, we float to the surface automatically. The more we try and do something about these feelings and these thinkings, we're digging a bigger hole, because we're trying to do something about the thinking through thinking. So yeah, people do say the most insensitive things at times, unfortunately. We found kind of honesty did help that, but also when it does happen, it's okay. You will come back to the surface. You won't stay in this negative, unhappy place. It will pass, and you'll come back to the here and now. So yeah, thank you for listening. And just looking at some of the messages coming in. Thank you for your thank yous. And one comment is that maybe if we do another webinar, could we include something about how our spouses can get support? And we keep focus on this. And I think I'd love to do one on relationships if people would be interested in that, because interesting, you're in it together, most of you. Most of you have a partner on the journey, but it's interesting, most people, 99% of people I engage with are women. But also interesting, 50% of infertility cases involve male fertility, either solely or partnership with female infertility, but it's the women who seek the help. So maybe I'll do one on relationships. And there's plenty you can learn. One person in the relationship can make a difference. And I'd love to do something for men as well, because having been there, I know what it's like, and often they don't want to be tuned with their emotions. They're trying to be the strong one. There's all sorts of patterns that can go on. So yeah, thank you for that. That's a great idea. So maybe we can consider doing something maybe for men or for relationships. But there is something about spouses getting support, and something I'd like to consider doing more of, finding a way of men getting more support on the journey in a way that's approachable for them. So thank you for that. So we'll leave that there. You see the time, it's just rolled over the hour. So thank you for listening. I do hope it's been helpful. Please feel getting in contact if you've got any other questions or any other particular topics you'd like to see covered in webinars like these. And yeah, maybe we'll make these kind of a regular feature to help you on your journey. Because I'm passionate about helping people emotionally. So I truly believe, I should have said this up front, I truly believe that too many people go through treatment unnecessarily, and the success rate of treatment is unnecessarily low because the emotional and the mental support is not factored in the journey. So thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your evening for those in the UK or wherever you are in the UK, around the world. Have a good day, and look forward to connecting you at some point in the future. Take care.